not really what I meant, but that'll work. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cubist. My name is Bill Corey. I am the Cubist. And I want you to know that people accuse us of staging that lap at the beginning of the show. They feel like we're not really lapping. We're just doing it because it's a shtick at this point. I promise you, we are dumb enough to say stupid crap and start and make ourselves laugh before the show starts every single week. So hello, Isaac. Welcome to our collection of Isaacs. Isaac Shalev, how are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you, Bill?
I am well. I don't even think that I realized that we had scheduled consecutive Isaacs until Eric brought it up.
You know, I regularly joke that I'm no better than the third most famous Isaac in the board game industry. And then everyone's, different groups will have different, first one they go to. So what with Gloomhaven, Isaac, who I call Isaac Cephalofair in my head, but is in fact Isaac Childress, usually comes first. But it used to be Isaac Vega.
Who is the one that preceded you last week.
Right. And so all I'm really hoping, to be honest, is that nobody else named Isaac has any design talent.
Because if more Isaacs come up, you'll drop to fourth place? Is that what you're worried about?
There is no shame in being behind, Gloomhaven and Isaac Vega's plethora of games. But if somebody else shows up with some, incredible trick-taking game that remakes the genre, and I'll just be like, dude, that was my thing.
Come on, man. I only had one thing. Leave me alone.
I was third Isaac.
Well, you're first Isaac in my heart, Isaac. If it makes you feel any better. You are legitimately the first Isaac I think of when I think of gaming Isaacs, which is definitely not a conversation I have real often, but when it happens, it for sure has happened in the past. Patrick Hillier is also here. Patrick, I'm sorry we ignored you for so long. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Hey, I made it. That's all that matters.
It is exciting to have you here. Chat room, thank you so much for joining us as
is there
well.
Anyone in the chat? Is the chat working?
The chat's there. I don't think anybody's talking yet.
All right.
It always takes a couple minutes for folks to roll in, and we got a little bit of a late start today, but that's all right.
I'm checking out Rufus Isaacs. I just love this guy's name.
Wait, are you Googling just random Isaacs?
Yes.
Outstanding. All right. Tell you what,
I'm working on my questions.
Okay. We will do This Week in Isaacs over the span of the show. Every time you come across a fascinating Isaac, you can interrupt us and say, by the way, did you know? There you go. Very good. All right, that's fine.
We're talking about Isaac Asimov.
Yeah, but Isaac Asimov. That's true. That's true. He designed a couple of mathematical games back in the day. That doesn't really count, does it? No, never mind. All right.
Jason Hall's in the chat room. We need to talk about him.
Hello, Jason Hall.
I played games with Jason Hall this week.
You did because you were wearing your Cubist shirt, and he's a fan. That makes me happy. Every time people wear the merch at conventions, I get excited. All right. Before we go too far off the rails, patting our own backs about or patting something, I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about games we've been playing recently. Isaac, we were running late, so we didn't get a chance to do any show prep. Have you played anything awesome you want to talk about lately?
Oh, wow. I played many, many awesome things. I guess if I had to talk about just one, I'll talk about that I played Battlestar Galactica I have an annual Battlestar Galactica game. Okay. It happens at a convention that we affectionately call SkeeterCon for the many mosquitoes that we must battle because it's held at a state park, right? So we're in this rec hall of a state park in Westchester, New York. And I have an annual game, and we play with everything. I mean, just nearly all the expansion modules. It's a terrible idea, but we do it anyway.
Yes, it is. You're not wrong about half of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we go to Cobol. We don't go to Earth or anything, and we're not using the Demetrius, but we're using all the betrayal cards and all the treachery cards with all those mechanisms and the Cylons, with the leaders, and just a ton of crap. But it didn't matter, and here's why. I was playing President Laura Roslin, and I was President Laura Cylon. And standing to my right, so in the turn order, I followed the commander, who was also a Cylon. So it doesn't get much worse than that. When the fleet commander and the president are both Cylons, that's pretty bad. But when they follow each other in turn order, It's about as miserable as it can get for the humans, and in fact, we mopped up. It was a relatively quick game of Battlestar Galactica,
So
but man, so much fun.
To like 4 hours. Is that what happened?
I will say that with that treachery mechanism, and cards come out of that deck during the challenges, and it's like, oh, there's a skill check thing, so resolve this, but there's 5 of them, so you got to resolve 5 of them in a row. It's much more like Tales of the Arabian Nights played that way than it is Battlestar Galactica. The game sort of drives you.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting that BSG is the game that you went with here, because last week on the show with Isaac Vega, one of the things that we talked about a lot was Dead of Winter, and how Dead of Winter scratched a similar itch to BSG, but got done in about half the time from all of my experiences. It's interesting to hear somebody as championing the other end of the spectrum, is that you like BSG enough that you play it every year with all the bells and whistles.
Well, I think it's one of those games that if you play it every month, you'd probably go mad. But if you play it once a year, you want that 5-hour epic sprawl with, the 4, 5, 6 friends who you always play it with.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it becomes an event game rather than just we have a game night game.
For sure. And I would not play BSG. Like I have my own mix of expansions and so on that I prefer, and that if you play it with that mix, it's more of a 3 to 4 hour game than a 4 to 6 hour game. But I find that it just never really called to play it. Like there's a lot of real good games that I could play in that time span. And as someone who plays, I've got over 40 plays logged for September, and it's September the 17th.
That's pretty good.
I'm doing all right. And that includes, I played Terraforming Mars with Prelude, which I really liked. And Prelude's great because it chops off like a half hour from the game. It's wonderful.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I'll play the longer ones, but I'm not looking for Battlestar Galactica to fill that niche.
That's fair. All right. So I tell you what, let's break this up. We're going to make you, normally we make guests on the show give the patented Cubist rating scale, buy it, play it, forget it, or burn it for whatever game they play. We're going to make you give 2. 1 for the base game, and then 1 for your once a year, pull out all the bells and whistles. We need 3 tables and possibly some card tables on the side version.
Well, I think the first one is a clear buy it. I think the base game of Battlestar Galactica is still my second favorite way to play. And I think it's a terrific game. As for the epic sprawling one, I mean, it's a play it. I don't even play my copy, right? Somebody else has brought the copy.
I don't even have the damn thing yet. Very cool. Awesome. All right. I love that we ended up bookending this conversation between Dead of Winter last week and BSG this week. That's awesome. Very cool. And totally unplanned. Dueling Isaacs across time and space. I love it.
Oh, I was going to go with you on the planned. I was going to be like, yes.
No. Our viewers know how dumb I am. They know that I don't have the capability of planning that far ahead. I admitted at the beginning of the show, I didn't even know we had booked consecutive Isaacs. I definitely didn't have the ability to plan all this. Hey, let's talk about the exact opposite of the gaming spectrum, Patrick.
Sure.
From super sprawling
to super smalling. Not super, but sprawling. Yeah, I get it. I didn't get that lead in. I'm talking about this little tiny thing called Sprawlopolis. So this is the latest endeavor from Button Shy Games, publisher. It's by Steve Armini, Danny Devine, and Paul Kluka. And
you are the official mispronouncer of names.
You bet. So I probably got
that is true.
If I said it, that was wrong. Yeah, that was right.
Exactly.
This is a fun little city building game. So you lay out, three of these cards have scoring mechanisms on the back, and the other 15 of them get played by the players to lay out a city. And I'm a huge city building fan. I love Suburbia. I love SimCity, the video game. So this is right up my alley. So you are just laying down and trying to form groupings of industrials or residences or these commercial things. And then the scoring cards might direct you into a direction of, try not to have your parks on the perimeter, or try to have the biggest park, or some really kind of mean things like slumlord, like your cities next to the industrial zones. Your residences are next to the industrial or just funny things like that. Not funny, but just
Yeah,
cleverly named. So anyway, so each of those 3 cards add up to a number, and that's the score you're trying to beat. So it's pretty straightforward. It packs a pretty powerful punch. One of the things that this one came with, at least the Kickstarter, is this great little wipe-off marker thing. That these are the 3
the cards,
advanced cards, and then these are your 3 normal scores, and then you get minuses for your roads. You add it all up, and then you wipe it off. And my only disappointment with this is it's a little big. It doesn't fit in this, but all this fits in my quiver, which is where I carry it with a couple wipe-off markers anyway for my other roll and writes, so that doesn't really matter. But, it's great little game. Played a game of it this weekend while I was at a con, so I've probably played 6-10 games of it already.
I also have Sprawlopolis, and I backed it on specifically because I wanted a very portable, soloable game that I could take on work trips. So that way it's something I can shove in my pocket. I can play it on the crappy little tables they give you, and usually all the terrible hotel rooms I end up slumming it in. Something where it takes 2 minutes to set up and a minute to tear down, and you can sit and play and just kind of knock out a couple games. And I'll be 100% honest with you. I didn't really have high hopes for it at first. Not because I don't like the idea of button shy games. I actually love the concept of design within that hardcore limitation of the number of cards or whatever. Everything. Isaac, you all right over there?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I feel like I'm getting a little out of sync.
You're making a terrible noise. I didn't know what happened, so I was just making sure.
His TARDIS is revving up.
Nice. No, I didn't. My point was, I knew what this was, but I thought this would be a little throwaway game. It's hard.
See, I've actually won a lot. I don't know.
Have you won, really? God,
yeah.
I have yet to win. I have not won in 12 games.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What the heck are you doing wrong?
Hell if I know. If I knew, I wouldn't.
Maybe Patrick's cheating.
I could very well be cheating too.
There you go. I'm just saying, reevaluate your scoring procedure, sir.
Yeah. I'm just coming to Bill's defense.
I appreciate that. Well, hey, I taught it. Brandon, co-host Brandon, and I lost twice. Chris Ray and I lost twice. I've lost like 6 times on my own. Yeah, it's tough. Maybe we just got crappy cards. I don't know, but
I mean, that is one really big variable of the game, right? The cards are numbered, I think, 3 through 18. And when you draw out the 3, you could get you could get 3, 4, and 7, and your score to beat there is whatever those 3 add up to, 14.
That would be 14 for those who are keeping score.
Versus you could get the 3 highest numbers and have a much harder time.
Sure. Well, I mean, I assume that theoretically those numbers are balanced again against how difficult those conditions are to meet, right?
I haven't seen that.
I guess I thought that's what it was, but I didn't really analyze.
I don't know. I haven't played it enough to
all right, look, here's all we know. Chat room, help me out here. Do we think Patrick's cheating, right?
Yeah. They've already said it. They're already
right,
picking it. Don't worry about it.
That's fine. All right. So Sprawlopolis, buy it, play it, forget it, or burn it.
Oh, buy it. It's
for sure.
It's probably one of the better ones I've gotten from them.
I agree.
I like that it's solo, and I like that it plays really well. And
it's decent cooperative too. Like we had a lot of fun at 2 players. It was.
Yes.
I think that the whole idea of you can't show your cards to the other player is a little bit dumb. When the mechanics say you're past the hand, you get a hand of 3 cards, you play 1, and then you pass the other 2 to the other guy. So
and even Buscemi, who doesn't like co-ops, likes it. So there you go.
Well, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's real good. It's real good. So that's Sprawlopolis from Button Shy. Real good.
Yeah, it's a buy it.
I want to quickly talk about Brass Lancashire. The Roxley edition of it just got delivered, and I got it to the table last week for the first time. For those of you, this is the Martin Wallace Classic. Counts as a classic, right? It's 28 overall on BGG, so I guess it kind of has to a little bit. I've always loved Brass, but the production value of the original version was hot garbage and just actively pissed me off while I was playing it. Like, I don't want to play a game with plastic tiddlywinks for money, and I don't want to play a game that has cards that warped one game in because the card quality was crap. And I never really liked the artwork in the first place. And holy crap, didn't Roxley knock it out of the park? Not just from an aesthetic point of view. And I know people, a couple folks have said that they think the color palette is too dark. I think those people are insane. I think it's beautiful, but that's fine. That's personal taste. From gameplay, everything about this edition is better. The pieces are better quality. The cards are better quality. The rules have been cleaned up so that way there aren't all the weird twitchy little rules like the ghost link between Birkenhead and Liverpool or whatever the hell it is. There was some like mysterious link that only sort of existed if you were in one place and you wanted to play a card in the other. It was dumb. It was a stupid rule that nobody really understood and barely anybody ever used in the original game. The game didn't originally play well for 2 players, and now they fixed that, so it does play at 2 players on the base map. You don't have to play with the janky, weird map, although they give you the user-generated 2-player map that the BGG community created. They give you that in the box, so if you want to play the old version, you can. They give you all the stuff to play the old versions, even the old janky versions if you really want to, but the new rule set is just so much better and so much easier to teach. The iron clay chips are amazeballs. If you're a Kickstarter backer and you can get those, go for it. I will say that I looked today and I noticed that people are trying to get like $300 a copy for this right now. Don't spend $300. Like, it is not, just don't. Because you could buy so many other great games, but do spend $50 on just the base game, even without the clays, and then pick up some clays later. Roxley is doing a Kickstarter for just the iron clays, I think next month. So you can always get those awesome chips later on down the road, but it is a gorgeous edition of what I think is one of the best heavy economic games that has ever been designed. So go ahead.
Is Lancashire the simpler of the two?
Lancashire is the original.
Oh, okay.
It's the one from 2007, just cleaned up with a slightly better rule set and better components. Brass Birmingham is the new one with beer. And I have not played my copy of that yet.
Okay.
Because I haven't owned Brass for a few years now because it was so bad. Like it actually made me angry pulling that box off the shelf. It was so bad. Like, so I just got rid of it. And so I've been waiting and waiting. And this is a worthy addition to a truly great game. Yes, Paul, I don't know if I will go with the best game ever because I feel like all of my years of crowing about Eclipse would be somewhat tarnished if I said that. But I will say that it's probably in my top 20 all time, maybe my top 10 now that there's a really beautiful edition, especially with the rules fixes. They even did smart stuff like the deck of cards, the map trims itself down. You remove cards for 2 players and remove some for 2 and 3 and 4 and whatever. So that way the game scales itself really nicely, and they built in rules things so you don't have to like cover up those parts of the board. The rules already play along with it. It says basically we're not going to give you any cards for these spaces, but you can still go there if you want, which I think is a really smart and interesting way to do it. That opens up a whole new strategy. Like, it's just amazing. If you've never played it, you should for sure play it. I think this is Brass Lancashire, I think should be in every collection. If you like heavy games at all, it's just the best. Go for it. So there you go. Brass Lancashire, the new version from Roxley Games, is for me an absolute buy it. It might even be a bling it, one of the alternate ratings that we have never officially incorporated, because you might want to go buy the iron clays later. It's ridiculous. So Brass Birmingham was a co-design. This is my attempt at a segue. Let me know how I do. Between Martin Wallace and a couple other folks, something that Isaac is very familiar with co-designing, not Brass Birmingham, but I mean co-designing in general. Isaac, for those of you maybe that are not familiar with Isaac's work, is first off a fairly accomplished podcaster, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
There you go. I mean, you've been part of On Board Games for how long now?
I lost count. Yeah.
Forever.
So I was there for the 10-year anniversary, so now I get to claim I've been there forever.
There you go. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. But you have also been designing. Now, And I don't know, what was your first? I've got your page up here, but it never does a great job of sorting by like when it came out.
Sure. So my first published title was Ravenous River from AEG, which came out in 2014, I believe.
Okay.
And very soon after that was my self-published Chronosphere. Chronosphere was actually funded on Kickstarter before AEG picked up Ravenous River, but of course they knew what they were doing and I did not. Beat me to market. So those were my first two designs. And Matt and I started working together not too long after that. He had a couple of designs as well, Dragon Flame and Cosmic Kaboom, both with Minion games. And we've been working together ever since. Our best known games are probably Saikatsu, which you can see behind Patrick's shoulder, and that's an IDW release, a tile laying game with birds and flowers that broke into the top 2,000 in BGG not too long ago, which is something we're very proud of.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're also very excited because it was picked up for publication for an international edition with Hook and Friends. So they did a German, Dutch, and French edition, and it has been picked up for distribution in Korea as well. We just saw the artwork for the Korean cover posted in BGG. So awesome. The birds and flowers have gone global. They are everywhere.
Great. Now we lost Bill.
Yeah. Oh, I just thought he was pulling an Isaac.
No.
I mean, it's not that we can't hear you. It's just that we can't understand you.
He sounds like Marvin the Martian.
So little Max Headroomy to me.
And the internet hates me today.
All right, so I'm gonna take over for Bill. So tell us, how did your partnership evolve?
I think it evolved from both of us appreciating and respecting each other to me just taking all the credit for Matt's work. I think that's largely how we've made it work. No, I mean, look, Matt and I met as part of that unpub kind of design group that finds itself hanging out on back tables at Gen Con and Origins that you don't pay for, but that you just sort of crash until people kick you out. And we test our games there, and so we met through that. He helped me out with some work on even on Chronosphere. He actually had a couple of rules tweaks that I incorporated, and I did the same for him in Dragon Flame. And at some point, I was actually on, I think I might have told this story possibly on this show, but I'll tell it again. So I was just on Twitter, and somebody mentioned how designing in partnership is a huge increase in productivity. It's not twice as much, it's like 10 times as much. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. And I responded and said, yeah, I'm really interested in doing it. I just don't know who is around me who designs games. And which is ironic because I live in a massively well-populated cluster of game designers, and Alex Kevern is here, and Gil Hova is here, and I mean Emerson Matsuchi is here. So there's no shortage of amazing game designers. But John Gilmore messages me on Twitter and he says, "Hey, if you want to co-design something, let's do it." And I was kind of blown away, and I was like, "Cool." Loomis messaged me also, and he says, "Well, I'm no John Gilmore, but I wouldn't mind trying it." And sure enough, a couple months went by. I said yes to both of them, but really just clicked with Matt in a way that felt really special and felt like it had there was a lot more to tell in that story. So I told John, I think I'm going to be monogamous and stick with Matt. And we've been together ever since.
That's awesome. Am I back enough that
yes,
I can be heard
back.
reasonably?
Yep.
Okay, good. Just double checking. I'm always fascinated by partnerships like this because I've never worked in a design partnership. I have worked sort of back when I thought I was going to be a game designer back in those days. I'd gone to a couple protospiels and playtesting events like that, and I watched, and it seemed like everybody I was watching was alone. I felt like all I was looking at were singles, but every time, like, there were more and more great games coming out of these partnerships, you know. Like, I mean, John Gilmore has partnered with people a number of times in the past. You obviously, I mean, Patrick made a terrible joke about El Grande in the chat room. Whatever,
Wasn't
you know.
a joke?
Yeah,
I played it this weekend. I really
every
did.
time you talk about El Grande, it ends up being a joke because you know how much I hate that game.
Okay, all
just
right.
being terrible.
I was trolling you. Yes.
Yes, I know. It's fine. It's fine. But my point is, I've always been fascinated by the idea. So, how is the division of labor? How does that end up working out here? Like, how often? Well, let's start at the very beginning of the process. Do the seeds of the ideas that start the conversations usually start with you or with Matt or both or neither or even split or what?
I think probably I have more ideas, but I also have more bad ideas. But so we have a Slack channel like everybody else, and we have in that channel a game ideas I guess channel, right? So in our Slack we have a game ideas channel where I will regularly dump, you know, any idea that comes to mind, because that's just my process, right? I will get any stupid idea. I have a game right now. I wrote this down just maybe a week ago. It's called Full Circle. Here's the dumbest idea ever, but maybe it's a game. Imagine that you have a circle, okay, and that you've got a whole bunch of pie wedges that would fit that circle, right? But none of the wedges are the exact same size, right? They all have different degrees of the arc. And essentially, you're drafting pie wedges to try and sort of complete enough of your circle to land in shaded areas that are on your sort of circle template that score for you. So imagine if you had like a shaded area that covered from 110 to 120 degrees of your circle. And you're trying to draft the pieces that land you there. And it's like a push your luck sort of game. This is a terrible idea, right? But it's got an interesting name, Full Circle. Well, that's kind of cute. And it's with pie wedges. And we haven't seen cards that are circular pie wedgy. And like, I'm sure if Matt like does stuff with it, it'll be a good idea. So I'm going to write that down, and we'll gnaw on some of those ideas. And I'm not like ashamed to have lots of bad ideas in there. Matt's process. Yeah.
Wedgie would totally sell though.
Oh God! you would make tens of dollars.
Right. I just have to rotate the circle so that the shaded area. I see where you're going with this, Patrick.
Dear God.
Anyway, so you know that's how the process starts for me. For Matt tends to sometimes bring a mechanism. Not that I don't do mechanisms too, but you know, and this I guess was sort of a mechanism. But Matt tends to bring something that's a little bit more thought out when he brings forward an idea. But he'll also very often just take my ideas and twist them on their heads and take them places I never expected. So that's how we start. I think we've somewhat adapted over the years because we used to make games like I think 4 years ago when we were less seasoned, I guess. We made games because something popped into your head and you're like, oh, I think I could make a game out of that. And I think that looking at it from 2018. We're comfortable that most of the ideas that we have, we could make games out of. So it starts becoming a little bit more, well, what games do we want to make? And that's a complicated question because there's games that we want to make but don't necessarily fit the market right now, or games that we want to make that don't fit our lives right now, that would require an investment of time and effort that we're just, we're both parents of young kids, and, Matt bought a house not too long ago and moved, and, we've got enough going on that even though I have this amazing, amazing vision for this sprawling game about galactic travelers through, in an Exodus ship with colonies and so on, ultimately, actually, Plaid Hat just announced Gen 7, which is essentially my idea, but they turned it into a game, which is to say they did 98% of the work. So I don't need to make it. But we've, I think, trimmed some of our sails so that we can make games that we can make, that we're able to complete and that we're able to present. And so that's changed, I think, a little bit what we choose to do. So that's the very long-winded answer to how we come up with ideas and how we choose what we're going to work on.
Mm-hmm.
How fleshed out are the ideas before you're willing to show them to Matt, and vice versa? Like, are you? I mean, I heard Full Circle's story, so I'm guessing that at least every once in a while it's okay to just kind of fling it at the wall and see if it sticks. But do you put a lot of legwork into making sure that the idea, I mean, quite frankly, doesn't suck before you start talking with him about it? Or are you just comfortable enough now that you're like, well, here's the thing that I thought about when I was asleep last night?
Yeah, I think very much the latter.
Okay.
So I think it's two things. One is that we sort of have a rule that we adopted not too long ago, actually, that the other person isn't allowed to say anything negative about your idea until they've played a prototype of it.
Oh, okay.
But the other person can't expect very much from you besides sort of nods and encouragements until you've put up a prototype, right?
Okay.
So it goes both ways, right? And it needs to go both ways because, for me especially, because my process is a lot of ideas, very few of which I follow up on, I need to be held accountable, right? I can't waste Matt's time with every stupid thing. And I don't want him to, right? Like, I'm a chatterbox. I'm going to do that. Similarly, though, like, Matt plays a lot of stuff in his head and is really, really good at that. And I can't, right? I've gotten somewhat better at it and I've learned from him, but I can't do it. And I need to say to him, Matt, I cannot keep up with you if you don't make some files for me. Like, I'll print stuff out, I'll move the cubes around, but you got to tell me which cubes. So that's become a negotiation, right, that we've reached of what we all need. Matt needs to know that I'm serious so that he'll engage and actually, spend his 90-minute commute cycles trying to play the game in his head. And I need components. I need to put it on the table.
Right. I'm definitely Team Isaac on that one. Like, it's like the struggle for me when I pretended to be a game designer was that I couldn't just write things down. I had to physically make the prototype right then and there before I could even figure out whether it sucked or not. So I think that maybe I was somewhere between the two of you. I can't play games in my head, though. So
do you guys live in the same area? You said something about a 90-minute thing. Was that your...
Oh, no, that's his commute to work.
Oh.
Matt lives outside of Chicago and I live outside of New York City.
Right. Okay.
90-minute commute to work. Shoot me in the face. I hope he's taking the train. Thanks. Anyway. He has recently moved, and so Gotcha.
But
I got that sucks. That's just a rough commute. I've been there. All right, so let's
game design time. That's all it is. Just more game design time.
And that's a cool way to look at it. Like, if you have something useful you can do on that, I suppose it's a lot less troublesome. All right, so let's move on. So you've got an idea. Let's say that it's Full Circle. You know what? I know that you think this idea sucks, but let's roll with it because it's a fun.
We're gonna make this work, Dave.
We're gonna make this work for you, Isaac. I believe in you. You're gonna be the second most famous Isaac by the time the show's over. If it kills me to do it. All right, so here we go. So you've got Full Circle. You are sold on this does not suck. Your finger righteously in the air. This does not suck. I'm going to make pie shapes that we can draft to fill in a circle, and you make them. How does the development process move forward after he's had his pie shapes and you have your pie shapes and he's played it in his head while he's riding into town and whatever?
Sure. Well, I think my process is to typically go to rules relatively early. So I have like my rules template that all of my games start with. And, I list out the components, I list out the goal, I list out setup as much as I can, right? I start making rules and nailing those down. That's in a Google Doc, in Google Drive, right? I mean, it's 2018. We use all the collaboration tools.
Sure.
The process of development usually ends up like this. So one player, one of us, me and Matt, playing the game of designing games together, one of us takes the lead for that game. And it's usually initially the person whose idea it was. So, Full Circle is my idea. So we've got a basic prototype up. We've got some general rules. I'm the one who's going out there and play testing it and playing it at home and convincing my kids to play it and playing it solo and seeing what happens and trying different rules. I'll usually bring it out to design meetups and get some other play testers and designers on it, and I'll keep updating in the Slack channel for that game. So that game will graduate from game ideas into its own Slack channel, and that's where I'm keeping track of what I've observed in development. Sometimes I'm taking photos of things and sticking them all in there. Matt is probably doing that not so much. He's got the game that he's more worried about, that he's using, time mainly for some other game, but he might get this one out a couple of times. And we'll drive forward that way until we kind of reach a place where I feel like I don't know what to do next. I'm stuck, or, I'm not stuck. I think it's great, but Matt's like, I'm not sure it's great, right? And we'll get into the question of what do we want to do next and so forth. And at some point, I will pass it to Matt. Two things happen when I pass it to Matt. One is he remakes the graphics, which is awesome, because I am good at making functional things, and Matt is good at making things look prettier. So he will usually take a pass at the graphics and upgrade the look and feel. And then he'll also play it some. And that's when we really get into the challenging point, because usually in my own head, the design is much more set, and I'm sort of thinking that I'm in later development and I'm tweaking and I've got the core nailed down. Whereas Matt is like, everything is up for grabs. So if this isn't fun, or even if I encounter a relatively small problem, I might rip out a whole system and put a new one in. And that can be tricky because I'm not always ready for that. I'm not necessarily emotionally ready for it and so on. So we've learned that happens, and we've learned to communicate better about it. But I think largely what I've also learned is that, those instincts that Matt has to not fall in love with and not hold on to anything are the right ones.
Yeah. Fail fast.
So, yeah. And fail frequently, right? Like, I don't mind failing fast. It's nearly every time that Matt does this, he's right.
That's the worst. Well, it's also the best, but I mean,
right? Exactly. That's exactly it. So I have tried, and probably if you ask Matt, he'll say Isaac's trying. But no, it's good for me. It's good for the design process, and I've also discovered, the parts to this where Matt is great and the parts to this where I'm great. And to I am trying to learn from him in some ways, but because we're in a long-term partnership, I also don't need to learn how to do those things for when I do it on my own, right? I can focus on being great at the things I'm great at instead. It's not so much an apprenticeship. It's more like complementary. And now we're specializing in the areas that each of us does well. A fair amount of that for me in this partnership is not on the design side. It's on the marketing and selling and pitching, and also just the being really attuned to the market, right? Because, Matt's an introvert, and part of my job is to be able to tell him, look, this is the stuff that's hot now, or this is where the market's moving, or these are the kinds of designs that publishers are looking for, so that we can, when we look at our, dozens of ideas, say, which one of these are we actually going to push forward? And so that's part of my role too, is to be, that external interface that lets us design smarter, that lets us design to the market.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that there are a fair number of times when it feels like designers are designing in a bubble and aren't paying attention, and having somebody that is, quite frankly, an industry person maybe first. Would that be fair to say that you were an industry person first before you focused on game design, Isaac? That feels like it's right.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
Okay.
I remember having a conversation in 2013 with Dirk Niemeyer, and I was talking to him about potentially helping his company out, and we were just enjoying each other's company and trying to figure out how to make something work out of it. And he said, look, the main thing that I need you to know is that I don't have room on my staff for a designer. Like, that's not what I'm looking to hire for. A developer potentially, certainly marketing, this and that and the other. And I said to him, I don't know what I am yet, to be honest, right? I've just gotten my foot into this. And I think the content creation media on board games side definitely blossomed. The kindfortress.com blog has been doing pretty well, though I took sort of a summer hiatus. And the design piece has been important to me, and I certainly identify myself as a designer from a creative perspective, right? This is one of my, main creative pursuits. But I don't think I'm, a designer's designer. I don't think that, I think that I'm strong as a part of this community, and I participate in lots of different ways, and that's who I am generally. Like
Sure.
I don't specialize in one thing. I tend to keep my fingers in many pots.
I think a dilettante is the word that they used to use for that. Are you comfortable being a dilettante?
I embrace it. I see it as plural and diverse identities.
Sure. We contain multitudes. That's another way to say it. Absolutely. I want to backpedal a couple minutes. You've talked a few times over the span of this conversation about your relationship with Matt Loomis, and you made a joke early on in the conversation about being monogamous, and you've drawn multiple parallels to the relationship you have with Matt, almost more so than the actual design process. Like, I feel like a big part of why this works for you, and one would assume also for Matt, is because he keeps taking your calls, I suppose, and responding on Slack, is that this relationship is, well, it's a relationship. It's not just a working partnership. It feels like you approach this from a different viewpoint. Is that accurate? Am I reading things in?
I think that's right. I mean, we've been doing this for about 4 years. And so think about that. That's a weekly call that goes 2 to 4 hours every week for 4 years. It's rooming together at conventions. So it's, Origins and it's Gen Con, and it's usually 1 or 2 or even 3 others. And it's someone you share your creative work with. And I don't design with anybody else, and he doesn't design with anybody else. And so when I think about game design, I'm thinking as much about Matt as I'm thinking about the games themselves, and nurturing that relationship and feeding that relationship and caring for that relationship produces better games. But it also just, this is a deep friendship that we've built over the years. And it has to be deep, right? Because we are, there's nothing more intimate than creating with someone, right? So that's where we're at. We have to share our worst ideas and our best ideas, and we don't always know which one is which. And you have to let the other person tell you. So I'm real proud of that, actually. Adult friendships are not easy. They're hard to start. They're hard to keep. And this is a long distance relationship too. It's something I'm real proud and real happy has been in my life. And Matt's become just a really, really good friend. And if we don't design another game, it wouldn't matter, right? Like we've built something together that I think will resonate throughout our lives.
That's really cool. And a lot of shows and podcasts talk, and this is like the podcast version of subtweeting, so just forgive me for a moment, about games and the people that play them, whatever, right? And that's true. Like, I think that I would argue that the Cubist is as much about that as it is about anything, too. We talk about games, but it's way more important to be able to talk with interesting people about whatever it is that they find interesting. I had never thought of it in design space in those terms before, and I think that that's fascinating. I think that it's really a cool organic way to approach what I think a lot of people view as basically like spreadsheet management, right? Like, I feel like a lot of us, a lot of us on the outside look at this like, well, wait a second. We talked about this earlier during Sprawlopolis. I made the assertion that I assumed that the cards that had higher point goals had easier, because I immediately just went to the math part of it, and all I could think about was numbers and mechanics and whatever. You approach this from look, Matt and I are partners. We're doing this together. Here's what I'm good at. Here's what he's good at. We complement each other. We're going to make this work. I think that that's fascinating, and it is such an alien way for me, not for you, obviously, and not for Matt, but it's something that I've never even considered before. And
Bill, I'm not a game designer either, so Sprawlopolis may be mathed out, right? And I don't see that.
Right, but here's the point. The point is, the first thing I thought of was the spreadsheet. Yeah. Like, legitimately, the first time when I saw that mechanic, the first thing I thought of was, I will bet you $10 there's a spreadsheet somewhere that has...
Sure there is, but I don't think that way. I'm like,
but that's
fun.
my point.
Well, so Bill, I'll say this. In my professional life, I help nonprofits with data management, which anytime I say that, people think spreadsheets and databases, and they think that everything is numbers and grids. And the reality is that most of my job is helping organizations build an ecosystem, build a culture, build an environment in which people know what answers they should be looking for, and then insist and demand that they get that information. And when those conditions are present, the math takes care of itself. And it doesn't mean that there isn't someone who has to do it, but it means that now the organization knows what it wants to value and insists on getting it. And that may mean hiring a data analyst or getting somebody to write your queries for you, whatever it is. But without those conditions, the data is nothing. The data is, you should have these reports. Why? I don't know, because people say they're cool, right? And it's the same kind of thing for me in gaming, and that's maybe it's sort of a system thinking approach. But Matt and I look. There are two games behind Patrick. One is Saikatsu. One is Show and Tile. Both of those games are incredibly short cycle in terms of how long it took to design and develop them. Really, really quick. There's another game coming out from Arcane Wonders called Daimyo. It spent 4 years in the shop, right?
Wow. Okay.
But the thing is that the games like Saikatsu and Show and Tile don't happen unless you have the environment in place. You put up your lab, you build your workshop so that you can keep knocking away on a game like Daimyo, which eventually comes out and is wonderful and does everything you want it to do and is super polished and is great because you spent 4 years on it. But the reality is that because you do that, you create the possibility of an amazing thing springing into your mind. And if you don't do that everyday work, Saikatsu never shows up in Matt's mind, and Show and Tile never comes together from the tangrams we were playing with in a break during developing some other game. Right? Like, okay. So that to me is how I think about it. How do I set the conditions? How do I groom and nurture and kind of create an environment for games to show up and knock on our door and say, we're pretty good, you should make us.
That's really cool. Mm-hmm. You're right. When people think of data management, the first thing I would think of is databases and spreadsheets. And it's really interesting that your approach to it works in this space as well. I mean, of course it does. Data is data. It's just a matter of what, where it's applied. But it's just a really fascinating way to look at it that I definitely have never considered before. I to be brutally honest, I don't know of a whole lot, and help me out here, Patrick, especially. I know that you troll me with your stupid El Grande nonsense every time you get a chance to talk on the damn show. But
I put it in the chat. I didn't say it.
Yeah, whatever, because you knew I was going to say it on here. Monogamous partnerships. I'm just going to use that now because I actually really dig that. I don't feel like there are a ton of them, right? Like, I know that there have been, for a while, partnerships that sort of rolled together for multiple games. But like Inca and Marcus Brand is the only other one I can think of, and I feel like that's cheating because they're married, right? Like, I feel like that is like the most, like that's overselling the point. But I mean, are there any other partnerships like that are just have been working together for that you can think of? Because I can't think of any, like off the top of my head, which I think puts you in a unique space. Or at least a rare space. Maybe that's a better way to say. Maybe rare is better.
I should say that, we look up to Matt Riddle and Ben Pinchback.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That's a good one.
Sure.
And, they're friends of ours for years now. And we often compare notes about process and so forth. And to some extent, we modeled some of our split on that. I play the Matt role and Matt plays the Ben role. Okay. So there is some of that. They're designers.
Can you say it's a game, please?
It's a game.
Okay, that's that's what Matt's supposed to. Matt, no, it's a game.
It's a game.
Yeah.
There you go.
Nice.
Yeah, so there are other designers who I often see on boxes together. I mean, Kramer and Kiesling, right? That's a common one. Or Bruno Cathala and Ludovic Moblanc, right, are on a bunch of games together. I don't know. I haven't had the opportunity to meet with any other partnership that I can think of that is sort of long-term, the same two people, and pretty monogamous, besides Matt and Ben. That's not, who aren't married also, because Anthony and Nicole came to mind, but they are also hitched, so not the same.
Yeah,
and I mean,
I was just you mentioned Cathala. Eric and I just did a show on Cathala, and in our research, we discovered how non-monogamous he is. I mean, he's had a lot of stints with certain people, but there's been a lot of.
He's more of a serial monogamist. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
They're like 4 wildly inappropriate things all popped into my head at the same time, and I'm proud of myself for not saying anything.
Right.
That was awesome. Very good. No, that's cool. I really think that's fascinating, and I will say, and I'm going to be 100% honest with you, and I will own my shame here, that the only one of your games that I have played as of right now is Chronosphere, and that's because you sent me a copy way back in the day. But that
just makes you an OG fan, right?
I am an OG. I got you. Well, and I mean, you and I have known each other for a few years now. Probably, mostly, I think originally just through meeting on Twitter and whatever, but we've met in person numerous times. Go ahead. Go.
Sinfu Lang M and
Jay Cormier.
Jay Cormier.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's a good one. The Bamboozle Brothers.
Yes. I was going to talk about Akrotiri tonight, but I couldn't find it. I put on my shelf.
Nice. They are a really great example of that, actually, and they've got a number of just awesome games.
They are. They kind of took a couple of years off in the last 2 or 3 years, right as Matt and I were spinning up. So we really should have just taken their brand and run with it. That would be perfect. But they're back now that Jay's twins are somewhat larger.
That's awesome. Well, Isaac, I gotta say, Saikatsu has been sort of on the periphery of my radar for a while. It is definitely not the kind of game that I normally gravitate to, but it might be one of the prettiest games that's ever been published. It is just drop dead gorgeous. I really want to play it.
Well, thank you. And I can only give Peter Woken a tremendous amount of credit for the work that he did, both graphic design and illustration, and Daryl Andrews, who project managed that, and the whole team at IDW. I mean, I remember looking at a piece of art and thinking, oh, this is pretty good. And they said, nope, this is not good enough. And they threw it out and then found another artist. And I mean, they really went to the ends of the earth to make this as beautiful as possible. So just really, really grateful that we got to work with that team. I think, for an introduction to, Isaac and Matt, if you're looking for something outside of the Chronosphere, I would tell you to try Show and Tile, because Show and Tile is, a 3 to 6 player party game. It's the kind of game that I think you'll have a lot of fun with. It's visual. It's got some of the spatialness, but it's not really a crunchy Euro mathy game. It's a laugh and fun and, that kind of Pictionary meets Tangrams kind of game. So that might be more up your alley. And it should be available September 19th, which is also my birthday. So check that out.
Well, in that case, happy early birthday.
Thank you.
We're 2 days before your birthday. See, we need better show prep. Remind me to yell at Eric. I feel like Eric should have mentioned this. Like, Eric Buscemi, when you watch this later, I'm mad at you. No. All right.
Well, my real birthday this year is that Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement, comes out on September 19th.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Uh-oh. Yikes. Maybe there's something to be said there. I don't know. All right. Ben in the chat asked a question. We always ask in the chat if any people that are watching live have questions for our guests, and he has a question. He wanted to know who your dream designer you'd like to work with would be. Now, we're going to assume here that you are willing to be indiscreet with Matt, and Matt will be okay with this. So, assuming that cheating on Matt is okay, who would you love to work with?
It's a tough question. The designer that came to mind first was Rob Davio, who I've had the chance to meet a couple of times, and I think personality-wise I would get along with. And I love what Rob does because he's not afraid of getting into the deep end way too quickly, right? He'll dream the big dream and have the big idea and know that there's a ton of math that he hasn't figured out yet, but just jump in anyway. And I love that, and I think that would be a ton of fun. But I don't know. I'm also pulled in the Richard Launius direction. Maybe a similar kind of thing of someone who's super ambitious about the kind of stuff that he makes, but very, very much thematic, story-driven designers. Because I speak that language real well, and I'd be excited to do that. Now, Matt and I have that good interface because he's more mathy and I'm just mathy enough to hang out with the math kids. But yeah, if it was my dreams are, to be with somebody who is super narrative and thematic and, make crazy Cthulhu games.
You heard it here first. Isaac wants to make a legacy game. That's what I took away. No.
One of the stories that I love about Launius, just from a design ethic, is he just likes to make games that he wants to play. It's like, what a simple concept, right?
I feel like I've heard that from a number of designers over the years, that designing a game that you don't want to play seems pointless. And I feel like you can feel that from the outside. Like when you play a game that doesn't sometimes games feel like spreadsheets, when sometimes you can feel the grid too clearly. And as much as I think about those things, I also don't want to know, right? Like I don't want it to be so dialed in like that. And I think that there's a vibe to it that I feel like I can pick up on. Right.
But there are games for lots of different people. Like Jason pulled out this little game, and he kind of like downplayed it. We were just killing time, and he pulled out this little game called Illusion. And you're like trying to guess the percentage of colors on a card and put them in order, kind of like Timeline, but it's with art. And I'm an art person, I like studying art and graphic design and all this stuff in college, and I'm an architect. I'm like, oh my god, like this is like so much better than like guessing dates. This is like this is like 1,000 times better than that. I was like, I've totally loved it. And it's the same game. It's the exact same game. You're just trying to guess, which card goes in between another card. But I was like totally all over it and loved it. It was just like,
I think for me at least, the issue is that I like a lot of different kinds of games. And so, I was playing Monster Crunch, the breakfast battle game.
Oh, where did you find that?
Yeah, I ordered it online because I live in 2018. Okay. Patrick, when do you live?
Patrick, send a fax. They'll send it right to you.
You haven't heard my drama of trying to find that game. So.
Oh, there's a story here.
Oh gosh, yes. Oh gosh.
Will you share it with us, or
is it a fast
Well, no.
story?
Okay, so there was this podcast called Onboard Games, and Bruce talked about how great Monster Crunch cereal was. So I ran out to my Target to get it because they said they had it, on their little online thing, right? Because I'm what is the instant gratification kind of guy. I don't like to have to wait for them to come to me. I want to go to the store and get it right away. And I had it on my little phone, and I told the person it's not here on the shelf. Where is it? And it's right here on my phone. Says you have it. So she went in the back, and she came out with a puzzle, the Monster Crunch cereal game puzzle. And I said, no, that's not the game. That's a puzzle. And she goes, well, here. And we're comparing the code on the box to the game, and the codes were the same. So then she calls over her manager guy, and so we're standing in the aisle, and he pulls out his little computer gadget, and he pulls it up, and he says, pulls it out and goes, well, there must be something wrong with the target system because it looks like the board game on his gadget, but the box says the puzzle.
Of course, you then walk down the grocery aisle where there was the cereal.
The actual cereal, right. So now I'm worried that if I order the damn thing online, that I'm going to get the stupid freaking puzzle instead of the thing. So now I'm afraid to order it online because they're going to ship me the stupid puzzle instead of the actual card game. So then I went to the grocery store and bought the cereal.
Oh God. Okay. I was going to say, Isaac, will you please send him a link? I know you have his email address. Just send him a damn link.
No. I've given up. I've really.
It's too late.
I've gone to Target.
I'm just going to order him a copy. It'll be that's the answer.
Perfect. All right, there you go.
That's the real answer.
I'll get it eventually.
Yeah, apparently, because we're going to order you a damn copy because that's ridiculous.
Yeah. So but the reason I brought up that game is it's a real simple like climbing game, like trick-taking style ladder climbing game. Real simple. And I love those games. I play them a ton. I enjoy the kind of thinking that you do and whatever. And it's great. But my favorite game is War of the Ring, right? Which is like much more challenging and complicated than this and that. And, people say make the games you want to play, make the games you love. But I'm a dilettante. I love them all. There's so many games. I made a social deduction game. I can't stand almost every kind of social deduction game, but the one I made is the one that tried to address the things that I don't like about social deduction games.
There you go.
Send that one to Patrick too. Find something that
don't. Yeah, I still won't like it.
You don't know that. Don't tell our special guest you already know you won't like his game. That's
come on, Bill. Come on.
It's already sold out and out of print. You can't hurt me anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, by the way, speaking of, we got yelled at.
I have one other. I have three of your games at least. I've got one other one somewhere here.
All right. We got yelled at last week because we did not mutter during the main show. We did not point out that we are a proud member of Punchboard Media, where we all
something
bring
to the table.
Right. And also, On Board Games is a proud member now of Punchboard Media as well.
Where we all bring something to the table.
I'll just let you take it.
Although according to Bruce, the name of the show is The On Board Games, and must always be referred to as The On Board Games. I let you go a little bit earlier, but
I did not know that.
That is the new title of the show, The On Board Games. We are, of course, members of Punchboard Media, as is the KindFortress.com blog, where surely we all bring something to the table. I was going to wear my purple Punchboard Media T-shirt to this, but then my computer decided to take up my changing into wardrobe time with rebooting time. So I denied you all the pleasure of seeing me. It's very, very tight T-shirt. Really frames my.
I'm sad. We could have used some Isaac nipples, and we did not get them. That's fine. It's fine. It's all good.
Hey, this is rated E for everyone.
There's a sentence you didn't expect to hear tonight. I'll bet you. All right. Before
the show is usually off the rails, Isaac. You don't need to.
Yeah,
I don't need to encourage it. I don't need to push.
This is where we live, man. This is what we do. All right. Before we get out of here and we get to our cheap plug segment of our show, Patrick.
Yes. Are you ready for rapid fire?
I am.
Do you know?
All right. So there are two simple. Okay. Rapid fire is 5 simple questions. You may not repeat the question or say I don't know in an effort to gather more time. You just need to spit out the first question that comes to your thoughts.
You also can't repeat answers.
And
no repeating answers. Are there any lifelines?
No.
There are no lifelines. It's just you.
Nope. Just you versus the world, Isaac. You got this.
All right. Bring it in.
All right. Name something you could weave on a Loomis.
A sweater for Matt.
That'll work. Hey, name a way to score points in the game cribbage.
Kiss up to Patrick for teaching it to you.
Well, hey, that's a good answer. Hey, name a favorite dish that you cook.
Steak.
Oh, that wasn't unexpected. What's your favorite convention?
Ooh, PAX Unplugged.
All right, and name one of the birds on Saikatsu tiles.
Red, scarlet, tanager, robin.
I looked them up. They don't have names, do they?
They do. They have names in the rulebook because we looked them all up. They're
do they?
They're all native Japanese species. One is like the Japanese waxwing, and then there's.
Okay.
They're all native, as are all of the flowers. Because
I was trying to find them, but you don't have them memorized, do you?
I do not have them memorized anymore.
Okay.
But you can't just go around exploiting other cultures, Patrick.
Yeah.
Don't you do this?
No, I don't. No.
Can I just say that I love that Isaac is taking a shot at stealing your job of official mispronouncer of names after that birds thing. That was,
yes, he did.
What the
He
hell
did a good job.
But that was like 4 attempts at stealing it. That was wonderful.
It was like a 7-syllable word with wings on it.
I'm just saying, man. Isaac, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If people wanted to know,
I'm checking for real right now.
Oh, there you go. All right. So while Patrick fact checks your terrible bird pronunciation skills, do your cheap plugs one last time. Where would people go to find stuff, including the onboard games?
Sure, I've littered them so generously throughout the show. I feel like I could leave them as Easter eggs, but
you sure could.
You could find my blog at kindfortress.com. You can listen to Onboard Games over at onboardgames.net or check out
Onboard Games. Damn it! If you yelled at us, you don't get away with it either.
But don't go to theonboardgames.net. I don't know what you'll find there, and I'm not responsible.
This is all confusing.
So onboardgames.net, you can also go to inversegenius.com to learn about all the shows under the Inverse Genius umbrella. And if you want to get me on Twitter, I'm at kindfortress, or you can email me, Isaac at kindfortress.com.
Very cool. Patrick, do you have announcement-y things?
I can't find anything in this game.
It's on the top left of the first page. After, flip over the cover, top left, all the birds are listed there.
All right, I'll find it in just a second. Hey, I'm Patrick Hillier.
Yes, you are.
You can find me on Twitter at Over the Hillier, and I just wrote a blog on my blog Over the Hillier, which I occasionally write things like my recent trip to Buckeye Game Fest.
That's awesome. Very cool. Couple quick housekeeping notes for the Cubist. First off, Paul, you are the winner of the Caption This contest from last week when we asked you to screen cap Kimberly saying something. I'm not going to repeat it because I don't want to get demonetized on this show.
That's for only for After Dark, right?
Fine work. On the next month's After Dark show, we will reveal any future entries. Late entries are welcome. If you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, go watch last week's After Dark show. I promise it is worth your time. Yes, way, Paul. You are our grand champion. I got a prize working up for you. I'm working up something special for you, sir. So hang in there. But if you missed that contest, go watch After Dark last week on the channel, and you'll find out all about it there. I am not going to tell you any more than that because I want you to go watch the damn video. We had a lot of fun. A couple other housekeeping notes. First off, you may have noticed that all of a sudden the Cubist podcast on Instagram is active. I've had the account for a long time and haven't been using it. I'm now moving all the gaming content over to there. So if you're an Instagram user, go follow the Cubist there. It's the Cubist podcast, I believe. I will double check that. And I will post something to that in the description here after the show goes up. And let's see what else. There's nothing else I can think of off the top of my head. There was one other thing, but I don't. Oh yeah, you want to support the show? Go to thecubistpodcast.com. There's links across the top of the webpage that we're still not updating because my life has been insane. But you can go to PodPledge and support us there monetarily if you want to. Thank you to everybody that supports us both on Patreon, PodPledge, and by buying the merch. Buy the merch. We're going to run a contest next month for people taking pictures of themselves in Cubist merch, and we're going to give away a really, really good prize. And I'm not just saying that. I mean something really killer, like maybe an Essen game of your choice, kind of that level of killer. So if you want to be able...
Like catapulting...
Yes, like maybe that thing where you get to fling dice at a rubber ball in a wooden thing. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. So... We're gonna work up a really, really killer contest, but it's only going to be for people that own Cubist merch and take pictures wearing it or having it. So go to thecubistpodcast.com and click on the shop button at the top of there. Get yourself some Cubist merch and get involved in a really cool contest. I'm excited about it. You can find me at Bill Corey Jr., the show at Cubist Podcast. All of that is on Twitter. Thank you so much, Isaac, for joining us. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for being patient with our technical difficulties chat room. We really appreciate it. I know we got a little bit of a late start tonight. Thanks for hanging with us. I really appreciate it. Oh, there they are.
There they are.
Isaac finally came up with it.
I was going to read them on the way out, but he's beat me to it. All right.
There you go.
That's from page 3 of the rule book, everyone.
Yes. Yeah, page 3. All of you bird enthusiasts that are just pissed off from the last 5 minutes of the show. There you go. Everybody have a fantastic week. Thanks for joining us. We will catch y'all next week. Be good. Thanks, Isaac. We got to find more Isaacs now.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill and Patrick. Don't find more Isaacs.